And I think we've got a couple of who are going to come in, but I want Richard to start because I want to make sure we get as much out of him as we can. I will introduce him as a fellow, here we go, a fellow HubSpotter, and a brilliant example of what I love about the HubSpot brand. It's a genuine partner community, a global community. And Richard, very early on in Real Inbound's life, offered to mentor me as a new agency owner, living in HubSpot land and working with the HubSpot tools, and give some fantastic insight and some brilliant advice. So that's how we first met. Obviously, he's been sniffing around on the marketing in the crisis stuff, as we all tend to know what each other's business, don't we? And I've asked him if he'll come in and share some words with us. So, Rich, do you want to do your own version of an introduction and kick us off? Thanks very much for being here. I'm going to enjoy this. Looking forward to this.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me here. And bear with me because it is 7:30 in the morning here in Canada, where I am. I've got my morning juice here to get me awake. So hopefully I don't put you guys to sleep. I hope everybody's excited today. And really my talk today is really just to have a conversation that nobody really has when it comes to business. A lot of people are afraid to share authentically about what's going on. And what I heard in a lot of your introductions was how you want to help your customers be better. And in this post-COVID, current COVID world, what I see is there's a lack of humanization inside of marketing. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to take the stage and start sharing authentically about what we're doing for our clients, how we can help them, and just even our own journeys and how much power telling that story has. So I'm going to share my screen now. And as you can tell, we're going to talk about the real shit that nobody actually talks about. So just quick agenda. We're going to talk about the journey that I've had from, as I refer to, a roadkill bunny to a soaring bird. It's the story of my personal journey of the last 17 years. We're going to talk about how to take control back. And we're going to talk about how I learned that I was actually in control of my own life and I was the product of my own actions. So taking responsibility. We're going to talk about how we can create opportunity for ourselves and what the grind looks like, and basically how I started living a created life. So a created life is just a life that I want to live and how I can wind up being who I want to be. We'll talk a bit about structures and processes, and then we'll have kind of an open floor Q&A. So about me, I am the CEO and founder of Chirp Media. We're based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and we do service clients all around the world. And by around the world, I mean, we've got clients in Canada, in US, Australia, the UK, and Germany. So we started Chirp Media in 2008, but that journey started a long time ago, a long time before that. I was raised in the Northwest Territories, the frozen cold tundra, and throughout high school, I was setting myself up for a future in the culinary arts. My mother was always baking something. She was making fantastic foods, and I always got to help. And what this did was it inspired me to want to become a chef. How I ended up in marketing was by a fluke and by chance, and I'll go into a bit of that. But at that time, I applied to go into a mentorship program that actually taught us young people how to do different trades, live your passion and things like that. And they offered this program. It's called Skills Canada. And I applied for the culinary arts one. And what ended up happening, I was waitlisted. And that rocked my world. I was devastated by that. And over a period of time, a colleague of my mother's had told her about a similar program that they were offering for graphic design. And in order to take part in that, I had to give up my waitlist spot for the profession, the mentorship that I was dreaming to have. So I could only choose one. I could only choose one path. And little did I know that making that choice would forever alter my future. I competed at a territorial level about 6 months after joining the program, and I had won that competition, which then took me to a national level. I had won that. And then the following year, I had an opportunity to compete at an international level. And I got the chance, 17 years old, to go to Finland and compete against people that were in their college level, professional level of graphic design. So basically what I realized there was I was out of my league, but I didn't let that stop me. I actually placed second in the Finland competition, which was a great thing. And as soon as I got back to the Northwest Territories, I had a lot of interest in what I was doing. So I started a business at 17 years old, and it was called Dead Bunny Productions. I have an allergy to rabbits, so I thought, let's use that as a humorous way to build my business. And shortly after starting that business, I got my first paying gig, and it was only $3,000, but $3,000 to a 17-year-old just getting started was great. And I was able to, at that time, my first gig was to rebrand a Japanese tour company that comes through Yellowknife, Northwest Territories all the time. Somehow word got out. It was likely one of my parents, you know, how trying to support their kids. And I started winning government contracts. And eventually, within the first year, I had the ability to sell this business for 7 figures. So I was very fortunate and lucky, and that money helped pay for what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But one thing I noticed was at 17, I still wanted to do things that most 17-year-olds wanted to do. I wanted to travel. I had a chance to go spend some time in London and Amsterdam. And, oops, too far, sorry. And in those travels, I got to experience the world and learn new things. I ended up staying in Amsterdam for, I believe it was about 6 months. I ran out of money. My visa expired. So what did I do? I started fixing bicycles to pay for my way around. And eventually I just decided I should come home because my visa was expired. So when I came back, I ended up enrolling in a degree program for visual communications and got 2 degrees. How was it? I got a degree in visual communications and art history. I was able to travel to the Art Institute of British Columbia, and that's where I studied. And then I actually traveled back to Europe after I graduated. I busked on the streets in London, and again, I went back to Amsterdam and fixed bikes. So it was quite fun. But when I got back to Canada, there was something missing for me. And what it was I had not been able to fulfill my passion. My passion was cooking. So when I got back to Canada, I found the first culinary program that would take me, and that was in Red Deer, Alberta. And very quickly, I'd say less than 6 months into it, I discovered I had no passion left. I hated it. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I was sad. I was depressed. I was beating myself up. And a friend of mine actually told me to start designing again, as this would be a way to release my creative juices and feel like I'm contributing. And she just felt she wanted her friend back. She wanted to see me smiling. So what I started to do is I started walking the streets in Red Deer, and I was looking at logos for different businesses, and I'd take notes. And then I'd go home and I'd create completely new brands, and I'd post them on my wall. This isn't my actual wall, but that's basically the concept. So I would just post these logos up, and it just kind of became this mural. And these were logos for businesses that were trades-based or dentistry, or some of them were even big corporations. A friend of mine happened to be over at my house one night, and he noticed his father's business was one of those brands that was sitting on my wall. And he made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, and paid me $5,000 to take what I developed and then help them rebrand their entire corporation. So I saw this as, okay, there's still something here. I still have a talent. And I ended up selling actually every single brand that was on my wall, which was about 100 different brands for about $500 or $5,000 a piece. So I had this entrepreneurial spirit. That's just kind of how it worked. So after probably about a year, I started a new venture called Deviant Studio. And this carried on as a side hustle for me, but for the next 5 to 6 years. I had met a few individuals that had the same passion as me, and we joined forces and called it Chirp Media. And where Chirp comes from is another way to say communicate, which is why we came up with that name. Things started to look up, business was doing well, and we were bringing in just shy of 6 figures a year at that point. But for some reason, I didn't see this as success. I never saw anything I did as success. And this actually led into a very dark era of my life. So I didn't discover this routine that I had until about 2 years ago. Whenever I would see success or the chance of success, I would sabotage myself. I don't know a lot of people that do this, but I know people do. And what would happen, because we feel that we can't or we don't deserve success, we end up destructing ourselves. The ways I would destruct would be, I would go out and celebrate after a big win. I would buy pints for my friends at the pub. I indulged in drug use. At the end of the day, I ended up squandering away all the profits that we were making. I wasn't meeting deadlines, and I just continued down this self-perpetuating funnel of self-destruction. And it took 6 years, the suicides of 6 of my closest friends, the deaths of loved ones, to discover what I felt was that I didn't feel worthy of success. And that stemmed from a comment that was made in my teenage years. I graduated high school a year early, and my mom said to me, "You could have done better." And that stuck with me my whole life, because anytime I did something great, inside of my head, this limiting belief said to me, "No, Richard, you're not good enough. You could have done better." So I had to find ways to prove that right. For some reason, that's just how we do things. And to be honest, I'm still discovering that this shows up in my life. It likes to rear its ugly head, and I could just indulge in it. It was easy. So over the last few years, what would happen is I'd end up going on week-long benders. I'd be spending money before I even had it. I'd be borrowing from Paul to pay Peter, and I was a mess. It got really dark for me, to the point where I actually contemplated committing suicide. And I'm not ashamed to admit that to anybody. And this is what I'm talking about with the real shit, because there's power in being honest with yourself and where you're at. I met a great individual. His name was Christopher Burr, and he helped me out. So when I talk about power and when I made that realization, I ended up having the power to reach out and ask for help, which a lot of people don't. And when I asked him for help, he completely obliged. We actually ended up bartering services. He needed assistance in his marketing, and I needed help in my life. And we started working together. We got to the dirt of what was actually happening. We created some structures for me to really restore my sense of self. And he had me create these affirmations. I don't know how many of you would say that you have affirmations that you look at on a daily basis that tell you exactly who you are. And these were things that he had me say, like, people love you. Or in my case, on the Post-it note, it actually said, people love me, because it was very one-to-one. So he had me create those. He had me put them all over my house. And every day he'd check in on me. He said, "Give me 3 of your affirmations that you've read today." So there's this accountability. And about 6 months into our arrangement, he came to me asking me to meet this other team of marketers that were talking to him. And even though I was doing the work for him, he wanted me to meet them because he felt that who we are, my agency and his agency, were very aligned. And at that time, I was just coming out of my addiction, and I wasn't rolling in cash, so I needed the opportunity to possibly do some work and collaborate with them. So I'm like, okay. But little did I know that this meeting was going to change my life. I'm sitting there at a local coffee shop, and in walks my client and this woman. And at the time, I could only describe as the most intimidating person ever to meet. She just had this presence about her. But I had a feeling she was going to try to steal my client, and it wasn't going to happen. I'm not letting that happen. So I was very dismissive at first. But what ended up happening was she and I just talked. We talked about how marketing needed to change. We talked about how it needs to be more humanized. And ultimately, how people are just getting taken advantage of, those bad apples. And when we ended up not even talking about Chris at all. We just continued to talk. And what ended up happening is my ideas and my principles were validated on what I wanted to create. Finally, I was starting to feel a sense of worthiness and validation. And we promised at the end of the day to connect sometime in the future. And I'll tell you, she's good. She's taught me a lot about sales. She followed up with me that day. By the time I got home, I already had an email with her, and she said, I want you to come in and I want you to meet the owner of the agency. I didn't realize I was being vetted for a potential contract. And I ended up going to meet with the owner, and we started a contract-based collaboration. He offered me what I refer to as a not full-time, but still part-time gig, where we were able to continue operating as Chirp with no issues. We would just be in communication if there was any conflicts and things like that. So it really allowed me the space to continue to operate my business. I was able to pay off almost all of my debts. I was able to get back on my feet, and I actually started loving what I did. And during my time there, I ended up falling in love with her. I discovered that both of us have a passion for food. I like to cook it. She likes to eat it. And we ended up getting married within a year. She's usually at all of my talks, but because this is virtual, she's actually in bed sleeping. We have a 9-month-old baby, and she likes to keep us up. And one thing about Queenie is, if you want a good kick in the ass, you just talk to her, because she'll set you straight real quick. And that's what she did. And she saw what my dreams were, my passions were, and she knew that I wanted to travel to Boston to go to HubSpot's annual inbound conference. And we were talking about it. And by the end of the conversation, we had the tickets booked, and I was on my way. She could see in me what my potential was, and she would never let me live anything less than that. So I'm talking about a true accountability partner here. She would not stand for me being any less than who I say I was. She also helped me realize that I was way undercharging for my services, because at that point in time, I was charging $1,500 to $3,000 for every project that came in our door. Not very sustainable, and you can't really grow. She taught me that I can build a future around my beliefs and incorporate those into the business. For example, community is a huge thing for us. We want to stand out and be there for everybody. So she helped us create a community plan for Chirp Media, and now it gives an opportunity for us and our clients to thrive. She rocked my world, though, part of the way through. And she introduced me to a personal development program called Landmark Worldwide. And it had me look at my life and challenge the stories that I was telling myself about what had happened. What I got is that it's very easy for us to blame the way that we are on incidents that have happened in our life. What's not easy, though, is looking at what actually happened and the story that you create about it. Even more so, what it had me look at was I had to clean up the messes I made in my life while living that story. So I did something that most people won't do. I picked up the phone and I called my 100 clients that I had at the time. I told them exactly what was going on. I told them that I used their money to support a drug addiction. I told them that the reason for the delays was because I just wasn't interested in doing the work. And I'm going to be honest, I lost a few clients, but the ones that stayed provided me or gave me so much respect is that I've never had a vendor call me up and tell me what's going on in their life. And I feel truly connected to you now because of it. And we have some of the best conversations. I call a lot of them on a weekly basis just to see what they're up to, because I'm curious. I actually want to know, and I want to help them reach their goals, regardless if it's business related or personal related. And what that spawned was a mentorship style coaching based service that we now offer. And what it provided our customers was an ability to cut down their costs, because we were then able to empower them to take on their own marketing initiative. There's no reason that they should have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars marketing their own business or getting somebody else to market their business. They can keep that in their pocket. They can be happy. They can understand the value of what we do because now they know what it takes. And I'm not going to say every single client wants us to do it with them versus do it for them, because sometimes they're just too busy. But through the process that we have, it shows them what it takes to actually do it. And they have this whole new understanding of the value that goes behind it. So instead of calling their cousin's daughter who designs websites, they now work with an agency that helps them achieve their goals. They're not making changes because it's pretty. They're doing it because they understand the data and they understand how people want to work. So at this point, everything shifted for me and I was happy and it was peaceful. Success started knocking on my door. I wasn't hiding from it. I was accepting of it. And in the span of 3 months, we took Chirp Media from its worst years in business. We were making about $50,000 in revenue per year. Not much to go on when you have a team of 4. And we took it back to a 6-figure business by investing in the business. First thing we did, we invested in people. Right now, we're a team of 7. We invested in creating culture, one that supports and fosters personal and professional growth. We develop programs to help business owners at any stage. Do you need more leads? We have a program for that. Do you need more of the right leads? That's the better question. And so we have a program for that. You want to know how to close deals faster and shorten your life cycle? Well, we've got a program for that. And then, do you want to create an awesome customer experience? We're working on that program right now, but it's coming. But everything we do has to service our core pillars and values. And those pillars and values for us are growth, community, and empowerment. Growth in themselves, growth in their business, creating a community so you feel like somebody's got your back, and empowering you to go to levels you never thought you could reach. And this is how we're changing this marketing world. We're bringing the human aspect back into it because that's what's going to be the most important at the end of the day. I love your comments too, by the way, everyone.
Richard, have you noticed that the ladies on the call are clearly very romantic and inspired by the honesty, whereas the boys have all started talking about food. It was your fault. You started us off thinking about food. I don't know. Is there something in that whole the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, perhaps?
Maybe. So as we venture into things, I spoke a lot about my story and what we're up to. And what I want to talk about now is taking control back. How I learned that I was in control of my life and everything that I do was because of my actions. All the results are because of what I do. And there was a lot of factors that I described in my story, but they're just things that have happened. That's how I feel. They're just things that happen. They have no power over me. They don't keep me up at night anymore most of the time. And this didn't happen overnight. It took time. It took a lot of discovery. It took a lot of self-reflection and developing new muscles into how I wanted to be. And so how does that look? So success. We all want to be successful, right? But the question is what is success? Is it reaching a financial milestone? Is it clearing your debt? Is it having a family? Is it landing that $150,000 deal? The truth is that we all look at success through the meaning that we give it. Success is only definable by ourselves. What looks like success to me may not be success to you. When you get that you're the creator of meaning, of what success looks like, you get to create success in your life because you can control what that means to you. And you got to remove the blinders that keep you just focusing on what's in front of you and start creating the world that you want to live in. And by creating that, it's like waking up in the morning and asking yourself or telling yourself, that this is who I am. I'm a speaker. I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. I have houses around the world. That's not happened yet, but that's what I'm living into. You get to start to see actions you can take because you've got nothing controlling you anymore. Now Now you can see a path. You say you want to get to $1 million a year. Well, when you start talking and living a life that's not controlled by meaning, what you can do is you can now see the path that it's going to take to get there. You can start creating the actions that are going to do it for you. Now, action, it only exists in a world without but. How many times have you said that you want to do X, but Y? Meaning something like, I want to go on vacation, but I can't afford it. If you were to reframe that context, you have access to the action. So I want to go on vacation and I can't afford it instead of but I can't afford it. You now have power behind that. You can see that there's actions to take. Like in this case, making more money so you can go afford to go on vacation, or hiring team members to take work on so that you have the time to go and take care of yourself. For me, I saw that I wanted to remain living and living for a long time. So I cut out partying, I cut out doing drugs, and I changed my lifestyle so that it could afford me the gift of life. I wanted to bring on bigger clients, so I changed my circle. I started talking to people that were in the circles I wanted to be in. There's a saying that your net worth is measured by your network. And if you start sitting in the right networks, your life will change. That's what happened for me. At the end of the day, you could even go into it as far as, if you are the smartest person in the room, you need a new room. If you start realizing you're the only one talking, then you're not learning anything, you're not developing anything, and you're not growing. So you want to be in rooms where you are literally not the smartest person. I wanted to increase my revenue, so I altered my sales process to provide more upfront value, which saw larger returns on the other end. So I started giving away more, providing advice, being in mentorship programs, and the results came back tenfold. I wanted to have a family, so I got married. And we welcomed our first child into the world almost a year ago. And that list just carries on. So when you start reframing the context of the conversations you have with yourself and with others, you can start to take control back. And realize at that point that you now have all the power in the world. If there's anything that I want you to take away from this lesson alone, is I want you to create a list of 5 goals that you want to achieve in the next year, right? And then spend some time without putting any meaning behind any of it. Look at what actions are possible to take today and then tomorrow. And you look at that every day. That's going to give you so much power. At the end of the day, it's creating that structure that's going to allow you to take those actions and fulfill on them. And I want you to get that this process that I'm talking about, it's not always going to work. You're going to have shit that comes up. Sometimes you're going to need to rely on others, and sometimes that fails. But don't get hung up on it. It's just what it is. And review each week. At the end of each week, look at it and go, what did I accomplish this week? What didn't I accomplish? What am I going to work on this week? Create a space for yourself where it's okay to fail, and make sure you allow yourself to fail fast, because you're going to learn that lesson a lot quicker. There's discovery in failure. When something bad has happened, go and look at it. Well, what actually happened? If you remove all meaning from it, what actually happened? I had a client during COVID that decided to put work on hold. We were fortunate that only one of them did that out of our pool of clients. And when I got the email, I was upset. I was beating myself up. I'm like, what did I do wrong? Why is he putting this on hold? He's hitting his revenue targets. He's doing all this. So why is he putting it on hold? I took it so personal. And my wife reminded me, she said, you're putting meaning to that, aren't you? Yeah, I made it mean that I'm not worthy of him to continue working with me. So as soon as I saw that, I was able to go, oh, wait, hold on. Let me get to the perspective of what's actually going on here. And I gave him a call and we chatted about it. And the only reason he's putting it on hold is because he just bought a big, massive ranch that he's going to renovate and turn into a showcase spot for what his business is. I'm like, damn, that's cool. I don't feel anything about this now. I really love what you're up to, because that made the difference. And him and I still have weekly check-in calls. We're not actually actively working together right now, but we have weekly check-in calls to see what each other are up to. And we get to have that human experience between each other. So stop taking things personally, get over yourself, and move on. So now you have actions, and the question is, how do you create opportunity? Tony, how are we doing on time, just so I know?
We usually go till at least 3:30, so you've got another 25, 30 minutes.
Okay.
But there are some questions popping up in the comments, which I'd like us to pick up and discuss as a group. So give another 15, 20 minutes would be fine, I'm sure.
Okay, sounds good. So how do you create opportunity? Now, there's countless ways to attract new prospects. We all know this. We're in the business of marketing and so on. We have social media, we have blogging, we have hosted events, maybe not that one right now, or networking events. And what you need to ask yourself is, what's your biggest inhibitor to growth? When we completed a study against local business owners here in Calgary, what we found was 92% of them stated that they themselves are the biggest inhibitor to growth and success. Why would you think that is? Sometimes it's that they couldn't trust others to do the work as well as they do it. They don't have a team. They're afraid to take action, or they just don't know where to start. For me, I've experienced all of the above. And what I realized was, I was afraid that I couldn't afford to pay the team. So I'd say, when our revenues hit this number, I'm going to go hire somebody. Well, it just doesn't work because I'm still carrying on the work. I want to hire somebody so I'm not working as much. So getting in more work to bring on somebody else just doesn't make sense. I was afraid that the team can't do the work as well as me because I'm such a perfectionist. So by giving it to them, I'd end up having to redo it because they didn't do it the way I wanted to. How does that help people grow? Right? I was letting business come to me rather than going after the business I wanted. I had this unprofound ability at the end of the month to pull a deal out of my ass and make sure I could pay for things. It still happens, but now I'm more out there and trying to stir up business. Not knowing where to start, who do you call? How do you look for new leads? And at this point, I was running a business for about 17 years. So why change the process? I know it all, right? It just doesn't work. The first step is you got to let go. You got to let go of everything that you're holding on to. You need to enroll people. You need them to be excited about what they're doing. You create a team by building leadership into yourself and your team so that they can take it on. I took a look at my list of things that I do on a day-to-day basis, and I broke it into 4 quadrants. What do I love to do? What don't I like doing? What's okay to do? And everything else. And anything that fell outside of what I love to do, I found somebody that loves to do those things, and I gave them the work. I stopped micromanaging the team. Everyone does it different, so just let them do it the way they do it. The end result is what's important. And when I step back to the things that I love and don't love, like I hate project management. That is like the biggest thing that drives me batty. I hate it. I love mentoring. I love doing business development. So I found people that love doing the project management side because that's just not for me. I don't like the admin task. I found someone who loves doing admin stuff. Now, I took those on and those people on so that I could focus on the things that I love, because at the end of the day, we want to be passionate about what we do. And when you choose to let go of those things, you begin to create space and capacity to do what it is that you love. So if you were spending 100% of your time on what you love, you wouldn't have any time. Next, I looked at who I was doing business with. Do they align with my values? Do they value what I do? Do they even understand what it is I do? And then I looked at who I want to do business with. Do they earn enough to pay for the services that I actually offer? Are they located in places that I can do business? Have they made similar investments? I mean, I'm sure you guys know all these kind of things already, but these questions were something that were important to us, and they were the basis of what we did to develop our ideal customer. And if people don't fit into that ideal customer, why waste the time. The time is our most valuable commodity. Just ask is one of the most important things I could probably leave you with on this. The one thing that most successful people have in common is that they actually ask for what they want. Once I discovered the whole I'm not worthy of success thing, I was able to just ask for business because that was no longer in my space. I started making strategic partnerships, like with HubSpot, working with people around the world, asking them for referrals. I made connections on LinkedIn. I asked for introductions. And I was very specific about my ask. So I've got a screenshot up here of a LinkedIn post that I put out. You know, this post continues to grow today and still gets traction. When we put this post out, we earned about 30 leads in less than a week. And we closed about $100,000 in new business in less than a month, just from this one post. And as I said, it's still going. We still get traction from it. We also did this in video format, and I sent it out to each of our existing clients. Even if they're our client, they know people. So in that video, I said, if you know somebody else that could be looking for this, all I want is an introduction. I'm not going to sell them, just I want to know who they are. And 90% of our clients gave us at least 2 referrals just from that one video. A bit about structure here. When you start performing at a rapid rate because you've got all these leads coming in, it's really easy to get lost in the day-to-day. You can get stuck in follow-ups, writing emails, writing proposals. So it's important that you create a structure for yourself and it's repeatable. And you got to review that structure frequently to see what's working and what's not working. And then you got to iterate that and try again. So this was my structure about a month ago. It's changed even more. But what it is really at the end of the day is I block off specific time every day that I'm going to do my connect calls or prospecting or exploratory calls, or when I'm actually going to work on client work. And everywhere that there isn't something that's color coded, so in the white spaces, that's what I have for additional capacity. That's my time, my space. But you got to also make sure that you're spending time scheduling yourself, which you do not see in this structure, and this is why I don't have this structure anymore, is there's no time for lunch, there's no time for dinner, there's no time for family, because it's not in my structure. So I started scheduling myself in, and that actually made the difference. I started saying, okay, at 8:30 a.m., I'm going to meditate for half an hour. I'm going to eat breakfast. I'm notorious for not eating breakfast. My wife beats me over the head because I don't eat my breakfast. I rarely eat, that's period. So when I started putting it into my structure, I started eating. And guess what? I have more energy now. I can get out there and I can be there. I'm not fading away and tiring out. And when you start scheduling yourself, you realize that your well-being is taken care of. I'm sure you've heard the saying, fill your cup first. Do it, because if you don't, you have no capacity for anything else. And in theory, based on this, I'm only working about 4 hours a day. It's really nice to only have to work 4 hours a day. I want to get that down to 4 hours a week. But the rest of the time of my day, it's filled with having conversations with people like you, spending time on calls with Tony, chatting about how he can level up his agency. You know, and then the rest of the time, it's whatever I want to do. So I'm going to segue a bit here, and I might blast through a few things pretty quick here. Basically, this is about your structure and how these things fill into your funnel. We do connect calls every day, but we only spend 15 minutes on our connect calls. We found that any longer provides too much information for the prospect to digest, that we end up losing that relationship because it's harder to get onto that next call. The intention of our connect call is to assess fit at a very high level and then get the next call scheduled, where we don't want to take the cheese. We just want to get that next call booked. Now, get that building relationships does take time. On average, it takes a person 7 interactions to establish trust with you. And in this digital age, you need 100+ touch points to do the exact same. And there's a lot of noise that you have to get through. So if you can get from a connect call to an exploratory call, you now have the opportunity to dig deeper into their business. We assess, our fit matrix is based off of BANT, budget, authority, need, and timing. Do they have the right budget? Have they made similar investments? Are they the person who can sign on the line? Do they have a stated need that fits what we do? Like, can we actually solve their problem? And how soon can they pull the trigger? We will actually get on a connect call and we ask them right off the bat, is there anybody else that needs to be on this call to make the decision to close? And if they say no, and we get to the end of the call and ask for the next meeting or ask if they want to close the deal, a lot of times you might hear something like, well, I need to run this by so-and-so. We call them out on it because this is a relationship of trust. You told me at the beginning of the call that you didn't need anybody else to make a decision, and now you're telling me you do. So what I have is a concern of trust. We call them out right on it, and it pays dividends. We end up closing a lot more deals a lot quicker because of that. We use the GPC framework to uncover their goals, their plans, their challenges. Biggest thing for challenges, like what's actually getting in their way personally from reaching those goals. At the end of the day, we need to know, you can't build a house without knowing how the house should be built, right? So we want to pull all that information out. Then we discuss next steps. We uncover what their goals are to create actionable steps that we can take right on the call, and we give those to them. They're free, they're valuable. They can choose to go with us or somebody else. They may ask for budget on that call. So we typically will say, in our experience, we see a range between X and Y. Does that scare you? That's an important part because we want to assess that, they're able to handle that budget and we can get that concern, the price concern, out of the way right away. And most importantly, you got to ask for the sale. I talked about just asking earlier. A lot of times I've been on prospecting calls with my team and they end the call and I go, you didn't even ask for the sale. And they go, well, we're having another call. I said, well, do you know if they're even interested? So you got to spend the time and you got to have the wherewithal to actually ask for a sale. Just ask for it. If it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out. But if it is, you'll close it. Onboarding was a huge change for us. We didn't really have a clear onboarding path. A lot of businesses don't. So how do you actually handle bringing on those new clients? Now, we're constantly revising this every day. We send out a welcome email with a video, and it sets expectations for the relationship. After the welcome video, we do a kickoff meeting where we further set expectations. And then each step in that onboarding process is automated. We want to make sure the process is smooth and fun. Here's an example of a HubSpot rollout kind of process. So we document everything inside of our process. And then follow-up. Do you have follow-up points after you've been working with a client, after you've seen success? Do you have scheduled reminders and thank yous that are going out for thanking them for the business? After I close a deal, I'll send a quick video thanking them, welcoming them to the church community, identifying what those next steps are, letting them know they're going to receive about 7 emails in the next week. And I send recaps after every meeting. On a quarterly basis, I send out a report card request for our clients to fill out to tell us how they think we're doing. And we even do this within our own team. Our own team reports on how we're doing. Boom, I made it. So, Tony, how do you want to roll this?
Well, I think if I just run through the bits that are in the chat quickly, and it usually develops into a conversation. Before we start though, Richard, how are you doing for time? Are you okay for?
I got lots of time. We don't open our doors for another.
Oh, of course, yes, first thing in the morning.
Exactly.
We're all steaming towards the end of our day, so so if I skip back up and we move past the conversations about eating. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Meaning, Ian, actually, before that, I'm sorry, Prith asked the question about your limiting beliefs, or more specifically, how you ditched them. Was it just the affirmations, or is there something else to it?
Affirmations were the start. The bigger trick is discovering when you're having a limiting belief. So my wife and I, as you can see, we sit across from each other all day, working. It's really fun to work with your wife every day. And anytime we catch each other saying something that is a negative emotion or a negative emote, or putting ourselves down. Like, I'll be sitting there and I'll be coding something and it's not working. But when I solve it, I'm like, fuck, I'm so stupid. She snaps me right there. She's like, no, you're not stupid. You just made a mistake. So having somebody to catch you in your speaking, like, that's what you got to pay attention to. As soon as you realize how you're speaking about yourself, you're able to start squashing those limiting beliefs.
I would add to that, it's very interesting that you pulled that aspect up. So I've done quite a bit of work on this. And there's in psychology, there's a principle called the Gestalt theory of mind. And it splits mind up into sort of three areas: the conscious mind, the outside of the mind, the subconscious, if you like, the inner, and then the creative mind, which is right at the center. And it's actually a subconscious that drives a lot of this activity, and you can equate it to self-esteem. Particularly, you talked about self-sabotage, and this is a big theme in Gestalt. And what the creative mind is trying to do is is align the conscious and the subconscious. So if success happens to us in the conscious mind, we win a deal, we win an award, we start a relationship with a new partner, and our subconscious doesn't believe we are worthy of that, our creative mind comes along and tries to realign those points back up. It says, I can't deal with this brick in our conscious. We have to align that, and typically it leads to sabotage. And the interesting thing about the subconscious and self-esteem particularly is self-esteem is always on. The subconscious hears everything. Everything that you're exposed to goes in, whether you've realized it or not, and it's not discerning. It doesn't say, well, that's clearly crap. So if you say to yourself, God damn that, I'm so stupid, actually that's gone into your self-conscious. Your own self-talk, whether you mean it or not, is going in and making a difference to your self-esteem. So positive self-talk is huge. Affirmations, or generally any positive self-talk, is huge for that self-esteem perspective. Prith, it was your question. Did you want to come back on that at all? The limiting beliefs and affirmation, self-talk, any of that sort of stuff?
No, it's just great to hear it. It's just sometimes, I've been looking at, because I get a little bit of this stuff and I've been trying to deal with it. And sometimes you listen to stuff and they say affirmations are too shallow, and you've got to maybe have a picture of yourself that you really believe in, because sometimes you can say these affirmations, but if you don't actually believe them and your limiting beliefs stop you from believing them, it's like a vicious cycle, isn't it? And it's like, so how do you get over it? And I did read, there was some advertisers saying maybe you've got to create a new picture of yourself that actually you do believe. So maybe it's moving from the verbal to the non-verbal, but I'm still working on that, but I'm still looking at that. Yeah, but thanks.
I would, just before you respond to that, Rich, I'm going to disagree completely with anybody who's told you that affirmations are surface, because of that psychology, even if you don't believe them, believe it or not, you're still having a positive impact on yourself and your psychology by saying them, even if you don't believe it, because you're hearing it, it's going in. It's a fascinating area.
But it's got to be done consistently and persistently. That's the issue. If the affirmation is a short-term thing, you never get past that point of changing human behavior, which is so difficult. It's got to be long-term.
Okay, cool.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, and if I add anything to that, so there's two worlds that we operate from, and most times they're collapsed, right? So one world is what's actually happened, and the other world is the story you told yourself. So, for instance, in my case, it was what happened was all my mom did was say, you could do better. And I made that mean. I created a story to say, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of her love or her affection. I'm not worthy of other people's love or affection. So I carried this story of what happened around, and I didn't look at what actually happened. So when you start creating your affirmations, the job is to uncollapse the two, so that you can clearly see what's going on. Now, in my affirmations, it's I am worthy. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of my mother's love. I'm worthy of my friend's love. those, and that's how you build it. And I think, Chris, you nailed it on the head. You've got to be at this every day. It's an exploratory sense of who you are. You got to keep looking. And when you feel that that affirmation isn't hitting it anymore or providing you any value, get a new one. Start living. Like, yeah, go for it.
It's brilliant, Richard, because I've been on that journey recently, and it's only, I've just discovered it was bullying as a kid. It still stayed with me that whole time. And actually, I've been going through that process right now, and it was limiting beliefs. And, what's uncovered is part of me, I was adopted, and that's been a block. It's because I've got two personalities. The one that's the explorer, that's the bit I enjoy, and I love that type of work. And the other bit is the bit that was good at delivery, but it never celebrated success. So I've had these two battles, and I keep falling back into the one where the one I want to be in is the other one. So this has been brilliant to hear what you've said. It's fantastic.
That's a lovely story. Thanks, Chris.
Stop falling, Chris. Stop falling into it.
Absolutely.
And
there's
own up
things
and take responsibility.
Yeah, there's things you've said there that actually I think will help me cement that stuff. So brilliant. Thank you.
Awesome.
Ian went on to talk about meaning. So I guess it's all related. But Ian, did you want to expand on what a fantastic word meaning is in that? And if you can remember, because that was a while back now in the chat.
Yeah, no, I just thought seeing it encapsulated that way, you are the creator of meaning is so very true. But just obviously you were referring, I guess, to sort of yourself at that time, Richard, in the journey that you were going on, but also how it applies so much to communications and marketing messaging. And I think, I'm definitely gonna use that somehow. I'm stealing that, Richard, if that's okay. Somehow, within my sort of pitch about me, who I am, etc. Because meaning, and everyone derives their own meaning from something. As you clearly put there, you are the creator of meaning. So I think that's the key to messaging and communication within marketing, and finding words and messages that allow different people to derive their own from their particular context, but actually you're not having to do 1,000 different messages. But I'm really not saying go for something generic and go for something that is so vanilla that no one gives a shit. It's the words that you're choosing. It's the difference between something like good and better. Good is a word that people can easily define. So, well, that is good, that isn't. But better, what does better mean? And, it was great as well, going back to when you said about growth and community and empowerment for Chirp, and how growth, it's got different meanings. It's got growth from a business perspective. It's got growth from a personal perspective, growth from an individual perspective, and it was just really good touching on it. Seeing it written out like that was quite interesting. That was it, basically. Yeah.
If I can add anything to that, language creates our world. The world we live in, the world everybody else lives in. Like, I'm going to hold this up. I'm not going to say what it is, but what is it?
It's
pen.
Looks like a pen.
But somebody who's never seen a pen before, ever in their life, won't know that that's a pen. So when we tell them it's a pen, now they start living from, this is a pen. Well, what's a pen supposed to do? And they start giving the pen meaning. But at the end of the day, this is just a device. I could call this a banana, and if you've never seen it before, you'll believe me, right? And you will form your beliefs around the meaning that I gave to you about this banana. So language creates our world completely. And if we can control the language we use to create our world, then it's going to be whatever we want it to be.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's right up you're getting right up my street now with talking about Wittgenstein in World War I, writing his postcards to the philosophers across Europe. Language is absolutely what Wittgenstein decided separates us from the animals, not the intelligence necessarily, not our, the thumbs and so on, but the actual ability to translate these concepts, feelings, art, science, everything to other people through this shared language, these shared definitions. And it's really interesting actually, because Alex, my son's language impairment, and it's that translation that he's not able to do. So he may look at a pen and it may take him a while actually to pull that definition out of his mind wherever he's got it stored and click those two things together. and then it might take him a while to physically translate that into actual speaking. You know, it's language is a fascinating area, and right away back to get Socrates in here as well, right away back to Socrates' cave and the definition of forms. Fantastic. And Nigel's very patient. He's always very patient, is our Nigel. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, I know,
Nigel.
because if you leave me free, I'll talk all over everyone. It's something my father said to me many, many years ago, and he said, "Not everyone is going to like you in life. So the best approach to take is to work on the premise that what you think of me is none of my business. Now let's get on with some work. Let's get on with some business, or let's get on with what we want to do together." And it doesn't mean you've got to like that person or they've got to like you. It's about having this understanding. And it was quite a funny piece of work that my wife did in her final dissertation for MA in Fine Art. And basically what we've done is we did these little books that on each page was a word, and the actual saying, "What you think of me is none of my business." And we hung all these things up on a matrix that was suspended from the ceiling, and people couldn't take one unless they wrote down what they thought of the artist. So it was a contradiction in the whole thing, and actually got some really good responses from it. And I think sometimes when I'm having a bit of a black moment, and I do get them, I'm not always as happy as I am in the public domain. When I do get those black moments, I just go to LinkedIn and have a look at one of my and read from my recommendations, because those people have said nice things about you. They believe in you and your abilities to take time to write something. And I think that's sometimes what a lot of us forget, is that, you know, when you haven't anybody take up on your proposals and things, what are you doing wrong? It's about questioning your own actions as well, because as you said at the very beginning, Richard, is that we do become, if we're isolated, and I think this COVID lockdown and quarantine, or whatever you want to call it, has done over the last 3 months, it's made us all realign ourselves and think about what we want in life. And I think this is something I'm seeing in many of the comments about what people want in life. Sorry about the bird. It's about understanding that what is it we want in life. And I think as we get older, we realize this. But as a younger people, they have this, I want to do everything. I want to travel. I want to be a millionaire. I want to have a yacht. I want to have a sports car and everything else. And you've got to really sort of think is that what the marketeers are telling us we should have in life? Or is it, or should we start thinking about what we actually want in life? And okay, it's a little bit selfish in that way, but as long as it doesn't harm other people, as long as what you want to do is not causing problems for other people, then I think being a little bit selfish for yourself and your family is part and parcel of being human. That's just a few ideas and thoughts I've had. A really excellent presentation, and thank you for your honesty, Richard. I think a lot of people don't actually verbalize themselves a lot, and I think part of relationship building, whether it's for business or for your own family and things, is about being honest to yourself as well as to the people around you. Anyway, that's my Kenneth.
Thanks, Nigel. A great insight as always. Actually takes us nicely onto Chris's question. You mentioned, Richard, 7 interactions to generate trust, with a nice little equation there, and then went on to say around 100 touch points, I think you said, in the digital world for same. Chris has asked us to explore that. This is Chris Roberts, actually, to explore that a little bit.
The bit of exploring was that, you know, I've always felt the same. It is 7 points. That was from the traditional sales world before we had digital. Yeah. And that would be the point, because you had to visit a client, eyeball them, have a conversation. At the end of 7, you would be able to say, well, you know, I've been consistent and persistent. Where's the order now? Because I can't continue to do this effectively. very crudely.
Mhm.
But digital has changed. So it was interesting. You were based on on traditional old-fashioned methods versus digital. And I've never seen the 100 in there. So can you unpack that a little bit and share a little bit about where you've got that from?
Yeah, so the 100 is just it's based on what we've seen inside of the data for ourselves and our clients. But it's not like I have to have 100 conversations. I have to see your message 100 times.
Yeah.
So you're scrolling through Facebook, you see someone's ad. You might click on it, you might not. A day goes by, you see somebody's ad. A day goes by, you see someone's ad. So before the brain starts to associate that I need to contact you about X, I have to see that ad about 100 times.
So does that mean...
Or it's got to be really compelling.
So does that mean you're an advocate of the fact that marketing a small amount regularly is better than a small, infrequent, large amounts of information delivery?
Yeah, so, and I mean, some of these opinions change over time. And what I'm seeing now is more of a shift towards an organic method. So if you could post once a day about something that is important to your ideal customer and have a conversation about that and create engagement, that's going to be way more valuable and have a better payoff at the end of the day than putting out an ad that may not fit that same person. So if you were to be consistent and you hold yourself to account to make a post a day, and I'm trying to think of a post that I did recently. It was about 2,000 words, one single post. And all it did was talk about how getting more leads isn't the problem that you need to solve. Getting the right leads is. So adding qualifying questions to your form will allow you to understand who it is you're talking to before you start to talk to them, and then B, understand the challenge before you even get on that call, so that you can actually be of value to somebody. And by providing that information on a daily basis, people begin to engage. They start to trust you. They start to see how other people are engaging with that content, and that builds trust. So those 100 touch points may not necessarily be just you. It could be the other people commenting, showing authority. It could be how many shares that it got. You know, there's lots of different factors that can create that 100 touch points, but that's essentially like how we see it.
So I was on another group recently, and the conversation again, marketing, was that, you know, do you post multiple times in a 24-hour period? Because people will read some stuff at that time because they're interested. That's their moment when they read. Other people won't read it. So you miss a lot of content. But you're saying because you're doing 100 over every day, you're at some point going to hit in a 365-day year. You're probably more likely to say you're going to catch someone at some point reading it that 100 times.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a customer, like let's keep it in the marketing space. If you got an ideal customer that's looking for new leads and things like that, if you post every day about how to acquire new leads, eventually they're going to be like, you know what, that's me. I want to talk to you. And you write it in such a way that you're identifying their pain point right away. Like, do you need more leads? And you start talking about that. And for me, I call it the art of the story. Is you're telling a story so that it resonates and connects with somebody. Now, you don't necessarily need to post 100 posts. You don't need to do it one every day. It's those 100 interaction points. Right? So one person comments on it. That's 1 point for the post, 1 point for the comment.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And I'm gonna start to pull us to a close there. Natalie, thank you very much for showing up again. There are questions to go through, and if anybody's got any burning ones that they want to pose before we wrap up, I would ask for them to bring it forward right now. Otherwise, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Sorry, I was spending all this time webinaring. What do you think of the webinar strategy, the advertising to get people to a webinar, to a sales call thing, Richard?
I think they're perfect. What I see works the best is not the typical webinar where we talk a lot about the product or the service. What works the best is a case study webinar. So if you can get a client of yours on a webinar to talk about how awesome you are, it's way better than you talking about how awesome you are. So you could do a webinar, like we're doing a webinar right now. So we had a client that had 10x revenue growth in less than 3 months. And what we're going to do is we're going to host a webinar that she's going to lead, and she's going to talk about the process that she went through with us. She's going to talk about what she learned, and then she's going to talk about the results. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end with us, kind of like an AMA, ask me anything. I find that has way more power than going in and just doing your standard webinar, let's talk about something, because it's not me talking, it's our customer that's had success. So you're building that trust right there.
Thank you.
Brilliant. A great question. Actually, it leads us into the final conclusion. Thanks, Richard. It was a brilliant, I would go so far as to say thrilling story at points. Very honest, quite emotional, and very inspirational, if I say so myself. Next week, we're going to change. We're going to take a break from this format. There's not that many of us here now, so I'll post this up in Facebook and LinkedIn as well. But the group discussion has obviously been one of the most important parts of what we do here. And we always end up running out of time, today being another example. So from next week, we're going to go for a few weeks of just the discussion itself. So rather than putting somebody to the front, we're going to discuss a topic on a more sort of roundtable format, I guess. Richard's just put a link to book a chat in the chat. Sorry, that wasn't very clear. Richard's put a link in to book a chat with him. If anybody's interested in a one-to-one chat, jump into our Zoom chat and copy that link. So next week, we're planning on discussing our current marketing and sales strategies, right? So if you want to try out a question like, what do you think of doing webinars, for instance, next week would be the perfect place to do it. We'll use the group's knowledge, intelligence, judgment, and experience to answer our questions around whatever pressing issues we have around the sales and the marketing sphere. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for stopping again for an hour and 15 minutes.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure to see you all, and hopefully see you all again next week. Thanks again, Richard. Bye, guys.
Nice to meet you all.